Have you ever wondered what it was actually like inside the most evil place humanity has ever created? We're not talking about the history books or the statistics. We're talking about the reality of waking up inside Auschwitz, where every breath you took was borrowed time, and the smell of burning bodies was just part of the morning air. Today, we're going to walk through a day in hell itself, and I'm warning you now, what you're about to hear will stay with you long after this video ends. When the Allied forces liberated Auschwitz on January 27, 1945, Soviet soldiers found something that would haunt them for the rest of their lives: mountains of human hair. Rooms filled with shoes, thousands upon thousands of them, each pair representing a person who'd been told they were going to shower. These weren't just victims of war. These were people who'd been processed through a machine specifically designed to erase them from existence. And the most disturbing part, every single detail of that machine was planned, engineered, and executed with the kind of precision you'd expect from building a factory. Because that's exactly what Auschwitz was, a factory. But instead of producing goods, it produced death. Between 1940 and 1945, over 1.3 million people were sent to Auschwitz. 1.1 million of them never left. But here's what most people don't understand. This wasn't chaos. This wasn't random violence. This was a system carefully designed by architects, engineers, and doctors who went home to their families every night after spending their days perfecting the art of mass murder. So let's start at the beginning, with the man who built this nightmare. April 30th, 1940, SS Captain Rudolf Höss arrives at a small Polish town the Germans have renamed Auschwitz. He's 39 years old, and he's just been given the assignment of his career: build a concentration camp. But there's a problem. The camp doesn't exist yet. All he's got is a collection of run-down Polish army barracks infested with parasites, surrounded by flat, swampy land with a climate so damp it breeds disease. Most people would see this as a disaster. Höss saw it as an opportunity. See, Höss wasn't some raging psychopath. That's what makes him so terrifying. According to the American lawyer who interrogated him at Nuremberg, he seemed completely ordinary, like a grocery store clerk. Calm, controlled, unremarkable. The kind of person you'd pass on the street without a second glance. But Höss had spent 3 years at Dachau concentration camp, and he'd learned something crucial there. Violence alone wasn't enough. You needed systems. You needed order. You needed to break people psychologically before you ever laid a hand on them. At Dachau, prisoners never knew how long their sentence would last. That uncertainty was a weapon more powerful than any beating. Guards would demonstrate how to tie a proper hangman's knot, then leave the rope within reach, suggesting suicide as an option. And then there was the capo system, one of the most brilliant pieces of psychological torture ever devised. The SS would appoint a prisoner as capo, giving them power over their fellow inmates. The capo's job was to meet work quotas by any means necessary, which meant brutalizing their own people. And if the SS wasn't satisfied with a capo's performance, they'd demote him back to regular prisoner status. When that happened, the other prisoners would typically beat the former capo to death on his first night back among them. The system turned victims into executioners, and it worked perfectly. Höss brought all of this to Auschwitz, but he was about to take it much, much further. Originally, Auschwitz was meant to be a quarantine camp, a temporary holding facility for Polish prisoners. But within weeks, it became permanent. And the death rate? Even in those early days, it was higher than any other concentration camp in the Reich. Of the 20,000 Poles initially sent there, more than half were dead by early 1942. But that was just the warm-up. Everything changed in June 1941 when Germany invaded the Soviet Union. The Nazi regime's policy toward Jews escalated from persecution to systematic murder. And in December 1941, in a closed-door meeting with Heinrich Himmler, Hitler gave the order: exterminate all Jews by any means necessary. Using Himmler as an intermediary, Hitler made sure there was no paper trail linking him directly to what would become the greatest crime in human history. The final solution wasn't the Nazis' first choice. Initially, they wanted to deport Jews as far from the Reich as possible. They even proposed Madagascar as a potential destination. But as the war dragged on and those plans became impossible, they needed a new solution. And that's when Hus had his breakthrough. In the summer of 1941, Hus learned about a gas called Zyklon B used to kill insects near Auschwitz. And he had a thought. If Zyklon B could kill lice, it could eliminate what the Nazis called human pests. Block 11 already served as the execution site within the camp, and its basement could be sealed. So they ran a test. Soviet POWs and sick Polish prisoners were locked inside, and the gas was released. It worked, and with the IG Farben chemical plant just 5 kilometers away, Hus could get all the gas he needed almost instantly. By late 1941, construction began on a second camp, 3 kilometers from the original. The Poles called it Brzezinka, the Germans called it Birkenau, and while it would eventually become the site of the largest mass murder of Jews in history, that wasn't its original purpose. Initially, Birkenau was designed to hold Soviet prisoners of war, but the facilities were inadequate from the start. One barrack was planned to house 550 prisoners, while at Dachau, a similar block could only hold 200. This meant prisoners at Birkenau would be crammed like firewood into barracks exposed to inhuman conditions. It was designed for death from day one. By 1942, Auschwitz had evolved into a vast complex. Auschwitz I, the main camp and administrative headquarters, Auschwitz II Birkenau, the extermination center, and Auschwitz III Monowitz, the labor camp supporting the IG Farben factory. This wasn't just a camp anymore. It was an industrial complex dedicated to murder, and every single detail was engineered for maximum efficiency. Now let's talk about what it was actually like to arrive at Auschwitz. Imagine you're a Jewish family from Hungary. It's 1944. You've been given hours to pack a single suitcase. You're told you're being resettled to work for the German Reich. You're even charged a resettlement fee. Everything seems official, legal. You board a train with your family, your neighbors, people you've known your entire life. And then the doors close. The train car is designed for livestock. 80 to 100 people are crammed inside. There are no seats, minimal ventilation, one bucket for sanitary needs. It's the hottest day you can remember. Bodies are pressed against you, burning hot. You can barely breathe. You tell your wife that if you don't come back, she should remarry, find someone good for the baby. You're thinking about your child, nothing else, but you're terrified. The journey lasts days, maybe weeks. People around you start to die. The elderly, young children, they die from dehydration, suffocation, illness, but their bodies stay wedged among the living because there's nowhere else for them to go. And then finally the train stops, the doors open, and you step out into Auschwitz. The first thing that hits you is the shouting. Raus! Raus! Out! Out! SS guards with dogs and whips are screaming at you to leave everything behind. You're separated, men to one side, women and children to the other, and there goes your wife and baby. You're told you'll see them every Sunday, every weekend. It's not true, it never happens. You're standing in a line now, moving forward. At the front, there's an SS doctor. He's not examining anyone, he's just looking. A glance, a gesture. Left or right, that's it. Your entire fate decided in seconds. You watch the man in front of you, someone you knew from your village, get sent to the left. Then it's your turn. The doctor looks at you, pauses, and points right. You don't know it yet, but you've just been selected for forced labor. The man in front of you, he's being sent to the gas chambers. He'll be dead within an hour. But here's what makes this even more disturbing. The Nazis created an elaborate deception to prevent panic. Victims were told they were going to shower before entering the camp. It made sense after the long journey. The SS even created beautifully landscaped gardens along the path from the trains to the gas chambers. The crematoria were hidden behind a wall of birch trees. People sat in the woods just waiting to go into what they thought were showers because they had no idea what was actually happening. Meanwhile, you've been sent to the processing center. You're stripped of everything. Your clothes, your possessions, your hair is shaved off. Your head, your arms, your legs. A needle pierces your flesh. A number is stamped on your skin. In a matter of minutes, everything that made you an individual has been stripped away. You're not a person anymore. You're a number, and then you're taken to your barrack. The room is packed with men and boys, all reduced to shadows of their former selves. Rows of wooden bunks stacked 3 high, each one barely wide enough for a man to lie flat. The air is thick with the stench of sweat, decay, and sickness. The floors are damp and caked with filth. A single dim lamp swings from the ceiling. You claim a small space on a top bunk with your father. You fall asleep, exhausted, unaware of the chaos that awaits you tomorrow. The next morning, you wake not to blows or insults, but to a bugle call. For a moment, you forget where you are. Then reality crashes back. You're ordered outside for roll call. It's raining. The cold seeps into your body. You shiver as you stand in silence. Around you, shoulders sag under the weight of exhaustion. A man in the row ahead stumbles and collapses face first into the mud. Not a single prisoner flinches. An SS guard notes something in his book. You wonder if anyone will help him. Then another guard orders a prisoner with an armband to come forward. Without hesitation, he grabs the body by the arms and drags it away, leaving a smear of mud in his wake. You've just seen death for the first time, and you realize something. Survival here depends on endurance, attracting little attention, and not falling ill. You're assigned to a work group at Auschwitz-Birkenau. A fear settles in. You don't know where your father is going, and deep down you fear you may never see him again. As you walk to your station, a strange melody begins to drift through the air. You glance around, searching for the source. An orchestra. A group of women stands under the watchful gaze of a conductor performing songs for the prisoners. Their voices rise in haunting harmonies, contrasting sharply with the grim surroundings. You lock eyes with a young girl playing a flute. She gives you a smile. You smile back. When you arrive at your station, you're shocked. Auschwitz is a huge factory complex dominated by tall brick chimneys emitting thick black smoke. The factory buildings are massive, with barred windows that give them a prison-like appearance. For the next 6 hours, you work to the bone. Any excuse will result in being shouted at, tormented, or beaten. Your group is tasked with offloading and moving sacks full of heavy raw materials from a train cart onto a conveyor belt. As you work, you lose yourself in thought to distract your mind from the pain. 2 other prisoners collapse during the morning. They're left to die. Unlike earlier, no one comes to take them away. At noon, the workers stop. It's time for food. You're past your ration. Watery soup with rotten turnips and potato peels. While you eat, you overhear 2 fellow prisoners discussing rumors about bizarre experiments taking place near the main hospital. In one of those rooms right now is Josef Mengele, one of the most evil doctors the world has ever seen. Today's task involves working on twins, a particular obsession of his. A few days ago, he infected them with typhus to see how their genes affect their risk of getting sick. Now he's checking on their progression. If one twin dies, the surviving sibling is killed immediately to allow a side-by-side dissection. His mission is racial purity, and his experiments have no limits. Back at Auschwitz, the day wears on. You feel your legs growing heavier with each step. The work seems endless. Then it happens. You slow down just for a second. Your grip on the material loosens and a sharp crack echoes as it hits the ground. Without hesitation, a guard rushes over, his face twisted with rage. You barely have time to react before the blows rain down. The guard doesn't stop. To scream would only bring more punishment. You're left crumpled in the dirt, gasping for air. You know that if you stay down too long, you'll be dragged away. You wish your father could be there to comfort you. Then a horrific thought comes to mind. What if he's dead? As you limp back to your barracks that evening, you pass the SS quarters. Their world is completely different. This section of the camp is made up of over 30 buildings housing hundreds of SS guards. The barracks are made from brick and include multiple rooms, often equipped with basic furnishings such as beds, tables, and personal storage. The same officers torturing and murdering prisoners every day have access to amenities like proper sanitation facilities and heating. You walk back into your barrack, using your remaining strength to search for your father among the hundreds of prisoners. Finally, near your bunk, you see a man hunched over with blood on the floor. It's your dad. You hug him, but he's almost too weak to stand. He was assigned to work laying railway tracks, and during the day, someone tried to escape. They were shot and killed on the spot. Almost everyone else in the group was beaten badly, including your father. You tell him to stay put and rush off to get food. On the northern side of the camp is a row of kitchen barracks. Inside, prisoners are preparing dinner for the workers. You manage to find 2 stale pieces of bread and a small sausage. You quickly hurry back. While your father recovers in his bunk, you notice from the corner of your eye a small group of prisoners huddled together on the dirt floor. They're playing chess. The pieces are crudely fashioned from wood. The board itself is scratched into the dirt floor, its lines uneven but clear enough to follow. One of the men sees you hovering and invites you to join. For a few minutes, you're not in Auschwitz. You're not a prisoner. You're a chess player, a strategist, a tactician. For the next few months, these are the only moments you look forward to. But the summer of 1944 brings nearly 2 months of hell. As the Nazi war machine rapidly crumbles in the east, Soviet forces are advancing. Time is running out for the Nazis, but it's also running out for you and the thousands of other prisoners still trapped inside. August 1st, 1944, 6 a.m. Since your arrival nearly 2 months ago, you and your father have faced a brutal life. Little food, no breaks, and constant beatings. You line up outside for roll call according to your work assignment. Then you realize your father is barely conscious. You hear a thud a few meters away. Your father has collapsed into the mud and is not moving. You pause for a moment, wondering how you could get him to the prisoner hospital. The hospital section consists of over a dozen barracks in repulsive conditions. Camp doctors can't help many of their patients because they're prisoners themselves. Even if your father was transported there, the conditions are so squalid that the chances of survival are extremely low. At night, rats chew away at the legs of the sick, both those alive and dead. An SS guard approaches your father and screams at him to raise himself up. He musters whatever strength he has to shakily stand, but his fate is sealed. The guard gives one signal, and 2 other guards come to escort him away. He won't be heading to the hospital. Your father is placed in a steady moving line entering crematorium 2 in the northwest of the camp, away from the prisoner barracks. These 4 structures are built with deceptive facades to prevent panic about the imminent fate. Inside, the room is bare and windowless except for one unsettling feature: a series of tall mesh-covered columns that stretch from floor to ceiling. These columns are the delivery system for Zyklon B, the cyanide-based pesticide used to murder prisoners in horrific numbers. Once the chamber is sealed, SS guards drop the gas pellets through these columns, releasing lethal fumes that fill the room within minutes. Each gas chamber is connected to an adjacent crematorium where bodies are immediately disposed of. At the peak of the Holocaust in 1944, the camp murders somewhere between 3,000 to 5,000 people each day. On this day, that includes your father. Between 1944 and January 1945, as the Soviets get closer to the German homeland, the SS begins to abandon various concentration and labor camps. In January 1945, the Soviets enter Auschwitz. To them, it's liberation. But for you, it's too little, too late. You're 250 miles away, marching through the dead of winter along with thousands of others. You've managed to make it so far, but your body can't handle it any longer. You collapse on the side of the road, falling face first into the snow. A guard shouts at you to stand, but you no longer have the strength. The last sound you hear is a rifle being cocked, followed by a shot that echoes through the cold air. Now let's talk about the other side of this nightmare. The guards. Because here's what most people don't understand. The SS guards at Auschwitz weren't all sadistic monsters foaming at the mouth. Many were ordinary men who'd been trained to see prisoners as subhuman. They went home to their families, ate dinner, played with their children, and then came back the next day to oversee mass murder. Some even convinced themselves they were doing important work for the Reich. The guards lived in a completely different world. While prisoners starved on watery soup and moldy bread, guards had access to proper meals, comfortable quarters, and even recreational facilities. They had a swimming pool, a theater, and regular social events. Some guards brought their families to live near the camp. There are photographs of SS officers relaxing by a river, laughing and enjoying themselves, while just a few hundred meters away, thousands of people were being gassed and burned. But not all guards were the same. Some took pleasure in the cruelty. They'd beat prisoners for sport, conduct random executions, and invent new forms of torture. Others simply followed orders, convincing themselves they had no choice. And a very small number tried to show small acts of kindness, slipping extra food to prisoners or looking the other way during minor infractions. But even those small acts couldn't change the fundamental reality. They were all part of a machine designed to exterminate human beings. The psychological impact on guards varied. Some became desensitized, viewing murder as just another day at work. Others struggled with what they were doing, turning to alcohol or requesting transfers. But the system was designed to make it easy for them. The gas chambers meant they didn't have to shoot people face to face. The capo system meant prisoners enforced discipline on each other. The bureaucracy meant responsibility was diffused across so many people that no single person felt fully accountable. When the Soviets finally liberated Auschwitz on January 27, 1945, They found about 7,000 prisoners left behind. These were the weakest, those the SS deemed too sick to evacuate. The SS had tried to destroy evidence, blowing up crematoria and burning documents, but they couldn't erase everything. The Soviets found mountains of belongings. 836,255 women's coats and dresses, 348,820 men's suits, 38,000 pairs of men's shoes, and 14,000 pounds of human hair packed and ready to be shipped to German factories. Rudolf Höss was captured by British troops in 1946. During interrogation, he confessed to his role in the murder of over 1 million people. He testified at Nuremberg, providing chilling details about Auschwitz's operations. After his trial, he was extradited to Poland and sentenced to death. On April 16, 1947, he was hanged on a specially built gallows erected right next to the villa he had occupied as Auschwitz commander, right next to the crematorium where so many of his victims had been killed. Josef Mengele, the Angel of Death, escaped to South America. Despite an international manhunt, he was never captured. He reportedly died by drowning in Brazil in 1979, never facing justice for his crimes. The story of Auschwitz isn't just about the past. It's a warning about what happens when hatred becomes policy, when bureaucracy enables evil, and when ordinary people convince themselves that following orders absolves them of responsibility. The Holocaust didn't begin with gas chambers. It began with words, with propaganda, with the gradual dehumanization of an entire group of people until society accepted their elimination as necessary. As Primo Levi, an Auschwitz survivor, wrote, "The true horrors of Auschwitz will never be fully known because those who saw the Gorgon did not return to tell about it, or returned mute. Those who survived experienced milder versions of the horror because those who suffered the worst did not live." Today, the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum stands as a memorial to the victims and a warning to future generations. Over 2 million people visit each year, walking through the same gates, seeing the same barracks, standing in the same gas chambers. The site serves as a reminder that this wasn't ancient history. This happened less than 80 years ago, and it was carried out not by monsters but by human beings who made choices. Every January 27th, the world observes International Holocaust Remembrance Day, marking the anniversary of Auschwitz's liberation. We remember not just to honor the dead, but to ensure that the conditions that made Auschwitz possible never return. Because, as Elie Wiesel wrote, "To forget the dead would be to kill them a second time." The story of Auschwitz is the story of humanity's darkest hour. But it's also a story that must be told again and again so that we never forget what we're capable of when we abandon our humanity. The victims of Auschwitz deserve to be remembered, not as statistics but as individuals. Mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, people with dreams, hopes, and futures that were stolen from them by a regime that saw them as nothing more than a problem to be solved.